I've noticed something with conspiracy culture for the last decade or so. And really, I guess it all started when things started to get ultra weird, which is right around 2015. I think it's been a full decade now that things just started to go haywire, topsy turvy, and we have found ourselves in this looking glass world. And what I would say about conspiracy culture is this, and I'm going to try to say this as succinctly as I can. It seems as though with more and more people rightly questioning, rightly taking issue with the 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 gatekeepers who promulgate the official stories of events. And as it becomes more and more clear that they are not trustworthy, that they lie habitually, and as more and more people become aware of that, you know, when I was growing up, there was no real question about like what you saw on the evening news. It wasn't like, oh, that's not really happening, or oh, they're just making they're probably standing in front of a blue screen right now. This was before, when I was growing up, it was before green screens. They were still it was still blue. It was green screens in the 90s, but in the 80s they were still talking about blue screens. I don't know the difference between one and the other, and I'm not that interested. Although somebody in the comments will probably want to go into detail about that little little asterisk there. But anyway, that wasn't really a thing. It wasn't, people didn't think, the network news, mainstream media, CNN is lying to us. And that is what people think today, and it's true. They are. There's far less trust in the media than there used to be, and I think it's because people have woken up and have become aware that the gatekeepers are not trustworthy. That the mainstream is not a credible arbiter of truth. So people are rightly aware of that, and as a result, maybe as a result of that, or maybe it's tangentially related to that. But let's just say what's happening. This is happening at the same time. This phenomenon I'm going to talk about is happening at the same time. It's happening concurrently with the loss of trust in mainstream media. There's this mushrooming of stranger, more out there, more elaborate alternative theories to official stories. And I would include among these the flat Earth theory. I would include the Tartaria uh, um, lore, the ice wall. I guess the ice wall is part of the flat Earth stuff. And I'm not, I'm not criticizing these theories or people who believe these theories here. I'm not picking a fight with anyone. I'm just saying that I noticed that in 2015, it was suddenly, it was like, okay, yeah, well, I think it was right around 2015. It was like, okay, we can question whether, planet Earth is even a thing now. how do we know that's even a thing? Maybe space isn't real. Maybe um, maybe they've lied to us about history, um, and so forth and so on. This and these are much more elaborate things, but they also there are elaborate or uh, what used to be tangential notions have attached themselves to older and um, more typical um, loci of conspiracy, like JFK, for example, the JFK assassination. You now have, it's now become fashionable in conspiracy circles, which are larger than they used to be, and more of a threat to the mainstream than they used to be, which is why conspiracy is no longer just thought of as a whimsical thing, that some harmless eccentrics might believe some out there stuff. But now, if conspiracy theory is evil and wrong, and if you believe it, you're a bad person, and that's sort of more the vibe they put out now. They're much more hostile to conspiracy theories, or conspiracy theorizing, or alternative explanations. And the reason for that is, again, that it's more of a threat now. It actually does pose more of a threat now because more people um, are on team conspiracy than used to be. But you have people just taking like a standard thing like JFK, and now the latest thing I'm hearing is Israel. Israel killed JFK. Israel's responsible for the murder of the assassination of JFK. Now, I don't know I haven't listened to what the evidence is for why this is said, but I do know that for all the time that the JFK theory, or that the people have questioned uh, the uh, the official story of JFK, which is pretty much from the event onward, basically, or just maybe a few months after the event onward, and so it's been a long time, and I've been aware, of conscious of it for a long time, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, uh, 2000s. Nobody was talking about how Israel killed JFK. And even it's only been in the last, like, maybe 2 or 3 years. Um, like, before that, Israel was just like not a part of the equation. It was not a part of the configuration. It was just not mentioned. It was irrelevant to JFK. But since the JQ has taken wings lately, um, and more people are on board with it, which in itself is a pretty wild and crazy event or thing to have happen, considering the kinds of social penalties that have attached themselves to it, and what's been the what in general has been associated with anti-Semitism. Like, if you have if you if you're thought of as an anti-Semite, then you can't it's like you can't just be someone who looks askance at this particular group of people. You have to be a like you're basically, you have to be the moral equivalent of of a concentration camp commandant. You have to be murderous. So that's been the associations with the JQ. And now that the JQ is gotten to be something that people actually, you know, are more and more. Well, there's more and more there's more and more people asking Qs about the Js. And so now we have this, well, Israel killed JFK. Whereas I swear to y'all, you know, like for the longest time, nobody was saying anything about Israel. Nobody was mentioning Israel in conjunction with JFK. Another thing is the Titanic. Like I remember thinking, I remember it coming into my perception over the last few years that now people have this idea that the reason why the Titanic went down is because of some plot that the it's related to the Federal Reserve, right? That a bunch of people who would oppose the federal the founding of the Federal Reserve. A bunch of those people were on the Titanic, and so the Titanic was sabotaged, and they made it look like it was an iceberg. And the real reason why the Titanic sunk or sank, the real reason why it went down is because it was sabotaged by those in the deep state, in what was then, the deep state in the early 1900s, who were wanting to establish the Federal Reserve. And that, again, there was nothing like that. Nobody talked about the Titanic as there was no locus of conspiracy when it came to the official story of the Titanic hitting an iceberg and sinking because it hit an iceberg, and the iceberg tore a gash in its hull, and that was what caused it to go down, and it was an accident. Maybe an accident brought on by hubris or whatever, but nevertheless, it's only been recently that you've had this notion crop up of this elaborate theory of relating to the Federal Reserve, to the formation of the Federal Reserve. So it's like they're just these notions, these theories are just mushrooming and becoming more elaborate. I'm not going to use a word other than elaborate, because I don't want to sound, I don't want to editorialize about the theories themselves, except to say that before before 2015, nobody was entertaining flat Earth. Nobody thought, and I've said this before. I've talked about how growing up in the South with a bunch of people. I was in proximity with a bunch of people who were fundamentalist Christians, Protestant Christians, non-denominational, or maybe Baptists, who believed, who interpreted the Bible, who interpreted Genesis literally, which is to say the earth was created literally in 7 days, and it happened around 6,000 years ago, and they believed this, um, and they oppose theories of the idea of evolution and the idea that um, the Earth was formed billions of years ago or whatever. But even fundamentalist Christians still believed in a heliocentric model. They still believed in a Copernican model of the universe. They still believed that the Earth was a planet, and that that the Earth orbited the sun uh, and turned on its axis. That stuff wasn't questioned at all. But around 2015 or so, uh, it was like everything came to be up for grabs, and that was one thing that was up for grabs. Or that seems like that's a pretty big thing, to go from uh, from saying, well, you can still believe in the Christian God and be pretty literalist about the Bible, uh, but but not dispute, um, as I what basically everyone thought was the case, what we about the shape of the Earth, and the reality of outer space and the solar system, and the sun being this gigantic mass of helium and or hydrogen and whatever the hell it is. I don't know. Science isn't my thing, but you know what I'm saying. Rather than, oh no, we're actually all, we're under the dome, and there's no space, and all the stuff that's part of the flat Earth model. No serious person. I mean, nobody who wasn't. If you believed in flat Earth, people would just think you. If you talked about the Earth is flat, people would just think you were joking, or if you really thought that way, people would just think that you were crazy. And that, when I say people, I mean everybody. I don't just mean liberals. I don't just mean uh, secular humanist liberals. I mean everybody. But but in the last decade or so, that's that theory, and the Tartaria theory, which I've talked about before. I talked about in a prior video, when I discussed the Chicago World's Fair, and how all of the every video on YouTube which discusses the Chicago World's Fair is which just talks about it from the historical perspective, according to the records that we have about you know what led to the the construction of the buildings that were a part of the Chicago World's Fair, and the events that took place around that time. That every single comment was, oh, this is fiction. We don't believe you. We know that these buildings were there for a long time before, and they were part of a different civilization before uh, um, before the reset happened, and they just burned down mysteriously, and blah blah blah. Like every comment is that, like, uh, there's a unanimity of those who think about these things are seem to be pretty unanimously, uh, they seem to have made up their minds about it, and they've come down squarely on the side of believing something that, again, before 10 years ago nobody was talking about at all. um and it's while I'm not, this isn't me uh criticizing or trying to poke holes in theories or anything like that, because I really don't have any interest in doing that. I don't care to do that. Uh, but but I just the one thing I would say, the one thing that does make me skeptical of these kinds of theories is, why haven't they been why do they just suddenly pop up around 10 years ago, and they were nowhere to be found before that? um they say there's nothing new under the sun. Well, I don't know, these theories, like flat earth and Tartarian theory, these seem to just come uh just out of the blue, out of left field. uh you know all of a sudden, and there they are. So what am I saying? What's the point of that I'm trying to make in this over 20-minute video that I had intended to be shorter? Um, what am I getting at here exactly? I think that what I suspect, and this is just what I suspect. It's not ironclad, and I'm not dogmatic about it, and I'm not like I don't have an interest in being argumentative or debating, uh, or having an emotional debate, uh, where we call each other shills or whatever for believing whatever we believe or whatever we suspect we believe. You know, um, what what I what I think is what I think has happened is that since since we've become more and more aware that the authorities uh, are not to be trusted, the guardians of new quote unquote news are not to be trusted. Since we become more and more aware of that fact, um, then um, there's more interest in entertaining ideas and notions that um, are like from the point of view of what most people would think of as normal, that are more and more uh, abnormal. All right. And again, that's not me assigning a I'm being very careful here. That's not me assigning a judgment to the theories or to people who believe these theories, because I know people who believe this stuff, and they're not crazy people. They're not uh, they're not irrational. They're not uh, they're not credulous people, um, at all. But that's sort of the whole point for me. You know uh, that it's easier to just believe almost anything, because we're aware we're there's just if there's been a great awakening, it's been an awakening of how much we've been lied to, and how shamelessly we've been lied to. Um, and it only accelerated after 2020. I say this all started in 2015. I don't know what happened in 2015 that set this ball roll starting to roll at that particular time. But it's been, you know, and I'm gonna quote. I'm gonna call this video "Conspiracy a Go Go," which is a reference to Richard Linklater's movie Slacker, one of my favorite movies. It's a quote from one of the memorable characters in that movie. Um, but it's been Conspiracy a Go Go. It's been like not just uh, uh, it's not just like, oh well, the things that we've always suspected, we're more and more convinced about. We're more and more convinced that the 9/11 account was the story we were told is not accurate. We're more and more convinced that what happened at JFK is not what the Warren Commission told us. We're more and more convinced that what happened to RFK uh, or Malcolm X or MLK or any of the other assassinations or attempted assassinations of political figures, that there probably is more than meets the eye. Ronald Reagan was probably got shot by John Hinckley, uh, not because Hinckley was obsessed with Jodie Foster after watching Taxi Driver, but probably because probably because there were powerful people who were wanting to take him out, um, and so forth and so on. With assassinations or with other events, other things that have happened, we're more likely to think that the official story uh, is probably at best incomplete, at worst, a total or near total fabrication. But what concerns me is that it seems like you have all of these other people are like not even caring about that stuff anymore. Like no, let's not even talk about who cares about 9/11. I want to talk about uh, why you know why half the human race are soulless or and are NPCs or I want to talk about oh, I don't know, whatever. I want to talk about how I want to talk about the ice wall. I want to talk about uh, you know how the buildings that you see downtown that where it says they were built in 1930. Well, that's all a lie. They were actually built 500 years ago with technology beyond anything that anybody had in 1930. Just it's like I kind of want to just be settled over a target. I want I want to I want there to be an aim to be taken at a target, and then we take this thing out, like with JFK, right? Let's just stick with that for a second. Um, you know, we were supposed to get all these records that were supposed to. We were told that all these records were going to tell this, reveal all this stuff to us, and I haven't looked through them. I don't know what they reveal and what they don't, but it doesn't seem like. It seems like the release of those of the previously confidential records is has not yielded that much that's new. Except that some people say, "Oh well, this just shows that Israel did it," which is something. Again, it's just like it's not what anybody was talking about before 3 or 4 years ago. It was nowhere near what anybody was really that I'm aware of was talking about. Um, So I want instead of just having these mushrooming, uh, like, oh well, this the world is a giant is just a big frisbee, or I don't we're uh whatever, just more and more kind of out there, outrageous, or elaborate, kinds of notions. Let's get some of the bigger things resolved first. Is that ever going to happen? Are we just going to keep spinning out with more and more elaborate theories and stuff? And is there, uh, I don't have that much longer left on this earth. I want to know something. I want one of these. I want at least one of these things, uh, to be definitively resolved, um, before I shuffle off this mortal coil.